Hollywood's dark side, mob influence revealed. Hollywood's golden age wasn't just glitz and glamour, it had a dark side. The mob had its hands in the studios, the unions, and even the biggest stars. From secret deals to violent showdowns, the underworld shaped Tinseltown in ways you wouldn't believe. How deep did the Mafia's influence really go? Let's dive into the hidden history of Hollywood and the mob. Chapter 1. The birth of Tinseltown's underworld, 1900s to 1930s. It's 1903 in Los Angeles. The sun had barely risen over the dusty streets of Little Italy when gunfire erupted outside the Matranga family's saloon. Charles Matranga, a Sicilian immigrant with a handlebar mustache and a penchant for violence, ducked behind a barrel as bullets ricocheted off the wooden walls. His rivals, the rival D'Andrea faction, had ambushed him in broad daylight. This wasn't New York or Chicago. This was Hollywood, or at least the lawless, sun-baked prelude to it. The Matrangas survived the attack, but the message was clear. Organized crime had arrived in Los Angeles, and it wasn't here to sell oranges. Long before Hollywood became synonymous with glamour, it was a haven for outlaws. Italian immigrants fleeing poverty in Sicily brought with them the Black Hand, a crude precursor to the Mafia, built on extortion, kidnapping, and murder. The Matranga family, led by Charles, dominated Los Angeles' Little Italy, running gambling dens and demanding protection payments from businesses. Their reign was challenged by Joseph Ardizzone, a ruthless enforcer known as the Iron Man, who sought to carve out his own territory. Ardizzone's rise was as brutal as it was brief. By 1906, he'd orchestrated the murder of Matranga ally Frank Buccola, sparking a decade-long vendetta. But Ardizzone's ambition outpaced his caution. In 1931, his bullet-riddled body was found in a ditch near San Gabriel. His hands had been severed, a Sicilian warning to those who overstepped. The violence wasn't random. These gang wars laid the blueprint for organized crime in Los Angeles. Bootlegging routes, gambling dens, and labor rackets became the mob's early playgrounds. And as Hollywood began to glitter, the underworld took notice. When Prohibition hit in 1920, Los Angeles became a smuggler's paradise. Its sprawling coastline and proximity to Mexico made it ideal for rum running, and no one capitalized harder than Jack Dragna, the Capone of the West. Dragna, a Sicilian-born mobster with a face like chiseled granite, operated with military precision. His men unloaded Canadian whiskey from boats in Santa Monica Bay, trucked Mexican tequila through desert tunnels, and bribed customs agents to look the other way. But Dragna wasn't content with liquor. He funneled his profits into nightclubs, casinos, and union rackets, positioning himself as Hollywood's shadow kingpin. His protege, Johnny Roselli, was even more audacious. Roselli, a dapper Chicago transplant with a taste for tailored suits, saw Hollywood's film industry as the ultimate cash cow. He partnered with Dragna to rig slot machines in studio backlots and strong-arm actors into investing in mob-backed ventures. The studios were like banks, Roselli later bragged to FBI informants. We just had to find the right vaults to crack. One of their most lucrative schemes? The midnight market. Under cover of darkness, Dragna's trucks delivered illegal hooch directly to studio lots, where starlets and executives partied until dawn. When the LAPD raided a Paramount Pictures warehouse in 1927, they found 500 cases of Canadian whiskey stamped with Dragna's signature Black Eagle logo. The charges mysteriously vanished, along with the evidence. While Dragna and Roselli built their bootlegging empire, another criminal syndicate infiltrated Hollywood's power structure, the City Hall Gang. Led by Albert Marco, a Hungarian-born pimp with a silver tongue, the gang controlled Los Angeles vice trade. Marco bribed cops, judges, and city councilmen to turn a blind eye to his brothels and opium dens. His most infamous racket? The French Line, a network of high-end brothels disguised as talent agencies where aspiring actresses were coerced into prostitution. Marco's reach extended to the studios themselves. In 1924, he blackmailed a prominent MGM executive caught in one of his brothels, demanding $50,000 in hush money. When the executive refused, Marco leaked photos to the Los Angeles Times. The scandal nearly bankrupted the studio and taught Hollywood a grim lesson. Cross the mob and they'll burn your empire to the ground. But Marco's arrogance proved his undoing. In 1938, reformist Mayor Fletcher Bowen launched a crusade against corruption, arresting Marco and dismantling his network. Yet the vacuum didn't last long. Dragna and Rosselli simply absorbed Marco's operations, proving that in Hollywood, the mob was too entrenched to die. No story captures Hollywood's fraught relationship with the mob better than The Making of Scarface, 1932. Howard Hughes' brutal gangster epic, loosely based on Al Capone, infuriated the real-life crime lord. Capone dispatched hitmen to Los Angeles with orders to shut down the picture permanently. Screenwriter Ben Heck later recalled the night Capone's men cornered him in a Chicago speakeasy. "They sat me down in a back room and one of them put a revolver on the table. 'You think you can make a joke out of the boss?' he says. I told him, 'This ain't a joke, it's a love letter.' After this movie, every kid in America will want to be Al Capone." The gambit worked. Capone not only allowed the film's release, but reportedly screened it privately for his crew. When FBI agents raided his Florida estate in 1935, they found a 35mm print of Scarface hidden in his wine cellar. By the 1930s, the mob's grip on Hollywood was irreversible. Dragna and Rosselli had infiltrated unions, studios, and City Hall, while the remnants of Marco's empire fed their growing vice trade. The stage was set for a darker, more sophisticated era of corruption, one where the mob wouldn't just influence Hollywood but own it. As the Great Depression deepened, desperate actors and filmmakers turned to the underworld for loans, protection, and work. The line between legitimate business and organized crime blurred into oblivion, and somewhere in the shadows a new generation of gangsters, Bugsy Siegel, Mickey Cohen, Frank Nitti, watched, learned, and waited. Hollywood's golden age was about to begin, but its foundation, that was pure gangster. Chapter 2, The Union Takeover, 1930s to 1940s. Chicago, 1934. A black Cadillac glided to a stop outside the Lexington Hotel, its tires crunching over snow-dusted gravel. Inside the car, Willie Beoff adjusted his tie, silk, blood red, and glanced at his partner, George Brown, whose hulking frame seemed to swallow the back seat. "Remember," Beoff hissed, "we don't ask, we tell." Upstairs in a smoke-choked suite, the bosses of Hollywood's biggest studios waited. MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers men who commanded starlets and screen gods, now sweating through their tailored suits. Beoff barged in, tossed a union contract on the table, and flashed a grin that showed too many teeth. $2 million, cash, or we burn your industry to the ground. The room froze, then laughter. $2 million? It was outrageous, impossible, until Beoff leaned forward, his breath reeking of bourbon and menace. "You think I'm bluffing? Give me 24 hours. I'll shut down every theater in America." He wasn't bluffing. When Al Capone went to prison in 1931, his successor, Frank the Enforcer Nitti, inherited a problem. Prohibition was ending, and the mob's liquor empire was drying up. But Nitti, a shrewd strategist with a taste for Savile Row suits, saw opportunity in chaos. Hollywood, he told his lieutenants, is the new whiskey. His plan was simple: take control of the unions, and you take control of the studios. Nitti's weapon? The International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE, a powerful union representing projectionists, stagehands, and technicians. If the mob could commandeer IATSE, they could paralyze the film industry with strikes, unless studios paid up. To lead the operation, Nitti chose two unlikely thugs: George Brown, a pig-faced union boss with a genius for corruption, and Willie Beoff, a pimp-turned-extortionist with a mouth like a switchblade. Brown became the union's president in 1934, thanks to a rigged election and baseball bats swung at dissenting voters. Beoff, posing as a labor consultant, became his shadow. Together, they transformed the union into a mob franchise. "This ain't about workers' rights," Beoff sneered at a private meeting with Nitti. "This is about our rights to their money." The extortion began quietly. In 1935, Beoff demanded $50,000 from 20th Century Fox to avert a mysterious strike. Studio head Joseph Schenck paid in cash delivered to Beoff's Chicago apartment. When Schenck asked for a receipt, Beoff chuckled. Receipt? You're lucky I don't ask for your teeth. But the real jackpot came in 1936. Beoff summoned studio moguls to a closed-door meeting at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. Flanked by Brown and two goons cracking their knuckles, he issued his ultimatum. $2 million up front, plus $150,000 annually, or the union would strike every studio simultaneously. Your industry is a prosperous industry, Beoff declared, and I must get $2 million out of it. The moguls panicked. A nationwide strike would cost millions daily. Louis B. Mayer of MGM, the most powerful man in Hollywood, turned to his lawyer. Can we fight this? The answer, not unless you want your sets bombed. They paid. The studios didn't just capitulate, they collaborated. Nick Schenck, head of MGM's parent company, Lowe's Inc., negotiated the mob's terms. Payments were disguised as consulting fees or labor relations expenses, then written off as tax deductions. It's just business, Schenck shrugged to his board. But the mob's appetite grew. Beoff demanded a cut of box office receipts, threatening to sabotage premieres. When Columbia Pictures balked, Beoff ordered union projectionists to scratch film reels of It Happened One Night, Clark Gable's Oscar-winning hit. Columbia paid within hours. Even stars weren't immune. Beoff forced actors to donate to union pension funds, a scam that funneled millions back to Chicago. When James Cagney refused, goons showed up on set, halting production of Angels with Dirty Faces. Cagney paid. The corruption seeped into Hollywood's glittering facade. Beoff and Brown lived like kings, hosting cocaine-fueled parties at Beoff's Beverly Hills mansion. They rubbed shoulders with stars, Marilyn Miller, Jean Harlow, even Ronald Reagan, then a union activist, while Nitty's men patrolled studio lots with Tommy guns and violin cases. But the good times hit a rot. Union workers, forced to kick back wages to the mob, starved. A stagehand earning $25 a week handed Beoff $5, or faced a beating. We were slaves with union cards, one electrician later testified. Beoff's most brazen power play came in 1937. After Warner Brothers delayed a payment, he stormed into Jack Warner's office, slammed a pistol on the desk and snarled, "You want to know what real drama looks like? I'll burn every fucking theater in this country, starting with yours." Warner paid, but Beoff's ego outpaced his discretion. At a party, he boasted to actress Joan Blondell about his arrangement with the studios. Blondell, a union sympathizer, leaked the details to reporters. The FBI took notice. By 1940, Beoff and Brown had extorted over $15 million, $300 million today. But their empire began to crumble when New York District Attorney Thomas Dewey subpoenaed studio ledgers, uncovering the paper trail of bribes. In 1941, Beoff and Brown were convicted of racketeering. At trial, Beoff turned informant, exposing Nitty's Hollywood scheme. The mob retaliated. In 1943, a hitman shoved a shotgun through Beoff's Arizona window and blew him from the waist up. But the damage was done. The studios, publicly shamed, vowed to clean house. Though whispers persisted of mob ties buried deeper, smarter, quieter. The Union Takeover wasn't just a shakedown, it was a blueprint. For decades, the mob used Hollywood's reliance on unions to launder money, control talent, and silence dissent. When IATSE President Richard Walsh took over in 1941, he found mob-linked trustees still embedded in the union's pension funds. "It's like pulling weeds," he admitted. "You tear out one root, 3 more sprout." As World War II raged, a new generation of mobsters, Mickey Cohen, Sam Giancana, watched, learned, and plotted. Hollywood had survived the Chicago invasion, but the war for its soul was far from over. Chapter 3, The Golden Age Gangsters, 1940s to 1950s. Beverly Hills, 1947. The clock struck midnight as Benjamin Bugsy Siegel paced his Tudor-style mansion, a cigarette dangling from his lips and a .38 revolver strapped to his ankle. Outside, palm trees whispered secrets under a blood-red moon. Inside, the phone rang. A gravelly voice hissed, "They're coming for you, Ben, tonight." Siegel scoffed. At 41, the mob's golden boy had survived shootouts, Senate hearings, in a $1 million Vegas boondoggle. But as he poured himself a bourbon, he didn't notice the shadow creeping across the French doors, or the rifle barrel glinting in the dark. The first bullet shattered his right eye. The next 5 turned his head into spaghetti with marinara, as one detective later joked. When the cops arrived, they found Siegel's corpse splayed under a portrait of himself. A gangster who dreamed of Hollywood royalty, now just another smear on its underbelly. But Bugsy's death wasn't an ending. It was a bloody handoff. Bugsy Siegel didn't just infiltrate Hollywood, he became it. With matinee idol looks and a wardrobe funded by murder, Inc., the Brooklyn-born mobster arrived in Los Angeles in the 1930s as the East Coast Syndicate's fixer. His mission, wrest control of West Coast gambling, prostitution, and unions from Jack Dragna's faltering empire. Siegel moved fast. He strong-armed his way into the Screen Extras Guild, demanding kickbacks from bit players desperate for work. "You want to stand behind Bogart in Casablanca?" he'd sneer. "That'll cost you 10%. Those who refused found their cars torched or their names mysteriously scrubbed from casting lists. But Siegel's real genius was vertical integration. He partnered with studio heads to build clandestine casinos inside soundstages, where Clark Gable and Joan Crawford gambled alongside hitmen. His pièce de resistance? The Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas, a $6 million desert oasis, funded largely by Meyer Lansky's mob coffers, that opened in 1946 with Jimmy Durante headlining and promptly flopped. "Ben was all flash, no math," laughed rival mobster Mickey Cohen. Indeed, the Flamingo's catastrophic losses and Siegel's skimming enraged the commission. But in death, Siegel got the last laugh. By 1950, Vegas was netting the mob $50 million annually. While Siegel partied with starlets, another mobster-star alliance was brewing, one that would reach the Oval Office. Frank Sinatra, the velvet-voiced crooner from Hoboken, cultivated mob friendships like orchids. His closest? Sam Giancana, Chicago's ruthless boss, and Charles Lucky Luciano, the exiled New York godfather. Charlie Lucky had financed Sinatra's early gigs. Giancana later strong-armed radio stations to play his records. But in 1960, the friendship turned transactional. John F. Kennedy, needing cash to beat Nixon, sent his brother Robert to Sinatra. The message, "Get the mob's money." Sinatra became the bagman. At Giancana's request, he funneled over $1 million in mob cash through Vegas casinos to JFK's campaign. The quid pro quo? A promise to ease FBI pressure on organized crime. It worked until it didn't. Once elected, JFK appointed RFK as Attorney General, who promptly declared war on the mob. A betrayed Giancana reportedly told Sinatra, "You better pray this pretty boy wins a second term, because if he doesn't, I'm going to bury you both." Not all star mob collusions ended in bloodshed. Take George Raft, the actor who played Gangster so convincingly, see Scarface, 1932, that real mobsters adopted his swagger. In 1940, Raft got a panicked call from James Cagney, who'd angered a New York family by refusing to fund a mob-backed film. Hitmen were en route to Cagney's Brentwood home. Raft didn't hesitate. He dialed Siegel's private line. "Ben, I need a favor. Call off the dogs on Jimmy." Siegel paused. "What's in it for me?" A cameo in his next picture. The hit was canceled. True to his word, Raft got Siegel a walk-on role in Manpower, 1941, though Siegel's scene wound up on the cutting room floor. "Typical Hollywood," he grumbled. "Even the crooks get edited." The mob's Hollywood takeover wasn't all threats and bullets. Siegel pioneered soft power tactics. He convinced Judy Garland to invest $50,000 in a Burbank bordello, promising 20% returns. She never saw a dime. When Warner Brothers planned a Siegel biopic, he demanded Paul Muni play him. The studio cast Edward G. Robinson instead. Siegel had the director's pool filled with cement. After Robert Mitchum's 1948 marijuana bust, Siegel paid his $1,000 bail, then charged 300% interest, payable via Mitchum's percentage of the big steal. Siegel's 1947 murder marked a turning point. The FBI, emboldened by Hoover's obsession with commies and hoodlums, began wiretapping mob hangouts like the Mocambo nightclub. Stars scrambled to distance themselves, except Sinatra, who doubled down. In 1954, he performed at the Cal Neva Lodge, a Tahoe casino co-owned by Giancana. When a drunk Dean Martin joked about Sam's trigger-happy goons, Sinatra reportedly slapped him. "Show respect," he snapped. "These men built us." But the writing was on the wall. By 1957, the Kefauver Committee had exposed Hollywood's mob ties, and IATSE purged its last mob-linked leaders. The golden age of gangster studio collusion was over, replaced by a quieter, more corporate corruption. Bugsy Siegel's ghost still haunts Hollywood. The Flamingo thrives as a Vegas landmark, while his extortion tactics live on in modern, pay-to-play casting scams. Sinatra's mob ties, once whispered about, are now streaming miniseries fodder. But perhaps the most enduring lesson came from George Raft. When asked why he socialized with killers, the actor shrugged. "In this town, you need friends who can do more than write a check." As the 1950s waned, those friends were moving from the shadows to the boardroom, and Hollywood would never be the same. Chapter 4, The Fixers and Fatales, 1950s to 1960s. Cuba, 1960. The Caribbean sun beat down on a rusted fishing boat as Johnny Rosselli adjusted his Panama hat, squinting at the Havana skyline. Beside him, a CIA spook in a sweat-stained linen suit handed him a silver case. Inside, 6 cigars laced with botulinum toxin. "Get these to Castro," the agent muttered. Rosselli smirked. Typical government clowns. They want a mobster to kill a communist. Back in Hollywood, Rosselli's other life was crumbling. His starlet mistress had just sold her tell-all to Confidential magazine. His phone was tapped, and somewhere in Chicago, Sam Giancana was counting the days until Rosselli's usefulness expired. But in that moment, Rosselli, the mob's handsome Johnny, the studio fixer, the would-be assassin, felt invincible. Born Filippo Sacco in Italy, Johnny Rosselli reinvented himself as Hollywood's smoothest gangster. With a cleft chin, Savile Row suits, and a knack for schmoozing, he became the Chicago outfit's ambassador to Tinseltown. His resume? Extortionist, producer, CIA asset. Rosselli's golden ticket was the Motion Picture Producers Association, where he brokered labor peace between studios and the mob. Translation: studios paid Rosselli to ensure unions didn't strike, while he skimmed profits from corrupt Teamster pension funds. He produced B-movies like He Ran All the Way, 1951, as fronts for money laundering, casting mob associates as extras. "We don't need Oscars," he told underboss Tony Accardo. "We need receipts." But Rosselli's pièce de résistance was his CIA partnership. In 1960, the agency recruited him and Giancana to assassinate Fidel Castro, hoping mob-owned Havana casinos could reclaim Cuba. The plots read like rejected Mission Impossible scripts. Poison cigars, botulinum-laced Monte Cristos, Castro's favorite. Exploding seashells planted near his diving spots. Mafia hit squad, Giancana's shooters posing as journalists. All failed. When JFK learned of the plot's post-Bay of Pigs, he was furious. Rosselli, ever the charmer, told the CIA, "You guys are lucky we're not charging for the reruns." While Rosselli played spy games, another mobster was making tabloid history by dying in Lana Turner's bedroom. Johnny Stompanato, a muscle-bound enforcer for Mickey Cohen, had the looks of a matinee idol and the temper of a rabid dog. He seduced Lana Turner, the sweater girl icon, in 1957, showering her with fur coats and threats. When Turner tried to leave him, Stompanato slashed her dresses, burned her photos, and vowed to scar her face with acid. On April 4th, 1958, their toxic tango ended. During a fight in Turner's Beverly Hills mansion, 14-year-old Cheryl Crane, Turner's daughter, grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed Stompanato in the gut. As he bled out on the shag carpet, Turner screamed to her secretary, "Call the police and my agent." The trial was a media circus. Crane claimed self-defense. Turner sobbed on the stand about Stompanato's abuse. The jury deliberated just 27 minutes before ruling it justifiable homicide. But whispers lingered. Had Cohen ordered Stompanato to terrorize Turner as part of a shakedown? Was the killing too clean? Mob historian Gus Russo later noted, Stompanato's death had Mickey's fingerprints all over it. He needed Turner scared, not dead. But kids, they're unpredictable. Long before Stompanato's fatal finale, he tried to flex his muscle on another star and met a Scottish wall named Sean Connery. In 1957, Connery was filming Another Time, Another Place with Lana Turner. Stompanato, raging over rumors of Turner's on-set romance, stormed onto the Paramount lot. He cornered Connery in his dressing room, snarling, "Stay away from my girl, or I'll cut that pretty face." Connery, a former bodybuilder and Royal Navy boxer, slammed Stompanato against a wall. "I'm from Scotland," he growled. "We don't do threats. We do this." A single punch shattered Stompanato's nose, sending him sprawling. Crew members applauded as Connery dusted off his blazer. "Tell your boss, Cohen, he can find me at the bar." Stompanato slunk away, but Connery's bravado had consequences. Cohen reportedly put a $50,000 hit on him, canceled only when studio heads intervened. Sean was lucky, co-star Glynis Johns recalled. In Hollywood, punching a gangster was like kicking a hornet's nest. The mob's 50s playbook relied on compromising the compromised. Marilyn Monroe's favor. Roselli allegedly pressured Monroe to seduce JFK, using her affair to blackmail the president into easing FBI mob probes. Judy Garland's debt. After racking up $150,000 in gambling losses at mob-owned casinos, Garland worked it off by performing at Mafia weddings. The Macambo tapes, Cohen bugged Hollywood's hottest nightclub, stockpiling recordings of stars' drug use and infidelities. But the crown jewel was Frank Sinatra's Cal Neva Lodge, a Lake Tahoe casino where Sam Giancana partied with Monroe, JFK, and Roselli. When the FBI raided it in 1963, they found hidden mics, rigged tables, and a tunnel system for smuggling cash. By 1964, the mob's Hollywood empire was fraying. RFK's antitrust lawsuits crippled studio mob partnerships. Roselli, now a liability, was indicted in the CIA plots and deported. And on July 31, 1976, his bloated corpse washed ashore in Miami, stuffed in an oil drum, legs sawed off, a bullet in his brain. At his funeral, a retired CIA agent mused, "Johnny died like he lived, overdramatic and half-baked." The 1950s to 60s proved the mob didn't need Tommy guns to rule Hollywood, just secrets, sex, and a Rolodex of sinners. Roselli's CIA escapades inspired The Godfather Part 2's Hyman Roth subplot. Stompanato's death became a Law and Order trope, and Connery's punch, it cemented his Bond persona, unflappable, lethal, allergic to bullies. But the era's real lesson was etched in Turner's courtroom plea. "I just wanted the fairy tale." In Hollywood, the mob wrote the fairy tales and charged a bloody premium for them. Chapter 5, Blood and Celluloid, 1960s to 1980s. Leonard Goldberg's wrists chafed against the rope as the van careened down a dirt road, its headlights slicing through the desert night. The producer of Winter Kills, a film about a presidential assassination, had spent the last 48 hours blindfolded, beaten and begging. Now his captors yanked him out, pressed a .38 to his temple, and hissed, "You should have stuck to the budget." Goldberg's crime? Squandering mob money on a box office bomb. His punishment? A bullet to the skull and a shallow grave near Joshua Tree. When his body was found weeks later, a studio exec shrugged. "In this town, you don't just flop, you disappear." But Goldberg's death was no outlier. It was a bloody receipt in Hollywood's ledger, proof that even as the mob's methods evolved, their message stayed the same: pay up or fade out. In 1972, Deep Throat, a 25,000 porn flick, became a 600 million sensation. Its profits didn't just buy yachts and cocaine, they built a horror empire. The mastermind? Louis Butchie Perino, a Colombo crime family capo with a flair for exploitation. Perino laundered Deep Throat's cash through Bryanston Distributing, a shell company that, legitimately, funded grindhouse films. His crowning achievement? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Director Tobe Hooper thought he'd scored a miracle deal when Bryanston offered $225,000 for distribution rights. But Perino's contract was a bloodsucker. Bryanston kept $30 million. Hooper got $8,000. They gutted us like a pig, he said. Perino's scheme unraveled in 1975 when the Colombos were indicted for racketeering. FBI agents traced Bryanston's cash to offshore accounts, strip clubs, and a New Jersey sausage factory, a nod to Chainsaw's meat hook aesthetic. Butchie served 4 years, then vanished into witness protection. His legacy? A horror classic bankrolled by porn, and a warning that in Hollywood, the real monsters wear suits. By 1983, Francis Ford Coppola was drowning. His epic One from the Heart had bombed, leaving him $50 million in debt. Desperate, he took a deal from Roy Radin, a flamboyant angel investor with a nose for cocaine and mob cash. Their project? The Cotton Club, a jazz-age drama budgeted at $20 million. Radin wasn't just funding the film, he was laundering money for the Genovese family. But when he skimmed $700,000 from the budget to buy a kilo of Bolivian flake, his partners got antsy. On May 13, 1983, Radin attended a business meeting in the Mojave Desert. He never returned. 2 weeks later, his decomposed body was found with a bullet in the skull. The killer? Karen Greenberger, a hit woman hired by Genovese associate Robert Evans. No, not the Paramount producer. But the irony wasn't lost on Hollywood. Coppola's set became a war zone. Genovese enforcers patrolled sound stages, auditing expenses and threatening crew. Richard Gere later recalled, "You'd be rehearsing a dance number, and some goon in a tracksuit would whisper, 'The money's missing. You seen it?' The film flopped. Coppola blamed bad luck. The FBI blamed the mob. Few films tanked as spectacularly or fatally as Winter Kills, 1979. Based on Richard Condon's novel about a JFK-style assassination, the production was cursed from day one. Mob backing, producer Leonard Goldberg secured $7 million from Philadelphia's Bruno family, who saw the film as a tax write-off. Budget bloat. Director William Richert burned cash on reshoots, including a $1 million yacht explosion that sank literally. The deadline: when the Brunos demanded a final cut, Goldberg refused. On May 3, 1979, Goldberg was kidnapped from his Malibu home. His wife received a ransom note, $2 million or we mail him back in pieces. She called the FBI. The Brunos called their triggerman. Goldberg's body was dumped in the desert, but the hit backfired. The publicity turned Winter Kills into a cult curiosity. When it premiered, audiences howled at a line that seemed to mock the mob. You don't need talent to be a killer, just a lack of imagination. The 1970s to 80s saw the mob shift from brute force to boardroom tactics, pension fund pilfering. Teamsters union boss Alan Dorfman funneled $20 million from worker pensions into films like Hair, 1979, and The Amityville Horror, 1979. He was murdered in 1983, shot 6 times in a Denny's parking lot. Star investments. John Belushi borrowed $50,000 from Gambino associate Danny Provenzano to fuel his drug habit. Provenzano later directed This Thing of Ours, 2003, a mob flick funded by extortion. Script extortion. When Sylvester Stallone refused to cast a Columbo associate in Rocky III, 1982, thugs firebombed his agent's Porsche. By the late 80s, RICO laws and wiretaps began dismantling the mob's Hollywood rackets. The Cotton Club murder trial exposed Genovese ties to studios. Bryanston's shell companies imploded. And in 1992, John Gotti's conviction marked the end of the Five Family's golden age. But the mob's DNA lingered. When Goodfellas 1990 premiered, real-life gangsters complained it glamorized rats. Henry Hill, the film's informant protagonist, spat, "Hollywood's the only place where the crooks win and get Oscars." The blood-soaked 1960s to 80s proved that in Hollywood, art doesn't imitate life, it launders it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre's gritty realism was funded by porn. The Cotton Club's glittering parties hid body bags, and Winter Kills became a tombstone for a producer who gambled with the wrong crew. As director William Richert mused, "Making a movie with mob money is like dancing with a chainsaw. Sure, it's thrilling, until you slip." In the end, the mob didn't just bankroll films. They wrote the scripts, rigged the lights, and directed the chaos. In Hollywood, it never demanded a rewrite. Chapter 6, The Shadow Economy, 1980s to 2000s. Sidney Korshak leaned back in his leather chair, swirling a glass of 25-year-old Macallan as the neon glow of the Strip pulsed through his penthouse windows. On the phone, a studio head pleaded for help. An actor's strike threatened to shut down film production. Korshak listened, then cut him off. "You'll get your labor piece, but MGM's gonna sell that casino to my guys at half price." A pause. "Or enjoy your picket lines." He hung up, smiling. At 77, Korshak, the mob's silent fixer, had turned extortion into an art form. No guns, no blood, just a whisper in the right ear, a signature on the wrong contract. Across the country, another empire was rising, one built not on whispers, but skin flicks. And in San Francisco, two porn pioneers were about to learn the cost of saying no to the mob. Dubbed the most powerful lawyer in the world by Time magazine, Sidney Korshak was the mob's ultimate cleanup man. A Chicago-born fixer with a Rolodex spanning Frank Sinatra, Ronald Reagan, and Carlo Gambino, he specialized in labor relations. Code for strong-arming unions, burying scandals, and laundering mob cash into Vegas casinos. His greatest trick? Making crime look corporate. When the Teamsters needed a $100 million loan for Las Vegas's Stardust Casino in the 1970s, Korshak brokered the deal with a catch. The mob skimmed $15 million a year. "Sidney didn't break legs," said FBI agent William Romer. "He broke balance sheets." Korshak's pièce de resistance came in 1985. Disney wanted to build Euro Disney but faced French Union resistance. Korshak flew to Paris, dined with Socialist Party leaders, and poof, the strike dissolved. His fee? A secret stake in Disney's Tokyo resort, later sold to Yakuza fronts. When Korshak died in 1996, his will listed $150 million in consulting fees. The IRS never found the bodies. They didn't need to. While Korshak played chess, the Gambino family dominated checkers, specifically the checkered floors of New York's adult theaters. The 1980s porn boom was a mobster's dream. High cash flow, low oversight. Matthew, Matty the Horse, Ianello, a 300-pound capo with a gold pinky ring, seized control by muscling out indie distributors. His tactics? Hijacking deliveries of rival films, replacing reels with Gambino-produced smut, buying video stores, then stocking only mob-backed titles, forcing performers like Tracy Lords, underage at her debut, into exclusive deals. By 1987, Ianello controlled 60% of East Coast porn distribution. His Caballero video became a front for cocaine trafficking, with drug cash laundered through best-selling titles like Naughty Nurses Need Love Too. But when the Gambinos tried to go west, they hit a wall. Two brothers with a camera and a death wish. San Francisco, 1972. Artie and Jim Mitchell scraped together $60,000 to film Behind the Green Door, a psychedelic porno starring Marilyn Chambers, a former Ivory Snow soap model. It grossed $25 million, the Star Wars of skin flicks. Enter Matty the Horse. In 1983, Ianello summoned the Mitchells to a Queens social club. "We handle distribution now," he growled, sliding a contract across a table stained with espresso and menace. "You keep 30%, we take 70%. Artie Mitchell laughed. "Or what? You'll kill us? We're pornographers. Our family stopped returning calls years ago." 2 weeks later, bootleg copies of Green Door flooded Times Square, undercutting the Mitchell sales by 80%. The brothers retaliated by hiring Hell's Angels to torch Gambino video trucks. The mob escalated, wiring $100,000 to the Mitchells' landlord to evict their studio. Artie responded by releasing Green Door 2, The Revenge, opening with a disclaimer, dedicated to the fat fucks trying to censor us. The war ended in 1991, when Jim Mitchell shot Artie dead in a drunken feud. The Gambinos sent a wreath to the funeral. The card read, "Now that's a finale." The 1990s saw the Mafia pivot from brass knuckles to Bloomberg terminals. Colombo Associates used insider tips to pump and dump tech stocks, netting $50 million before the SEC noticed. Lucchese capo Anthony Tumac Axaturo bankrolled death row records, demanding Suge Knight pay protection in cash and cocaine. John Gotti's brother Peter bought 15% of Manhattan's nightclubs through offshore LLCs, charging $10,000 per fire safety inspection. Even Disney wasn't immune. In 1995, a Gambino crew infiltrated Disney World's construction unions, inflating costs by $12 million. When auditors questioned invoices for 1,000 tons of pixie dust, the mob threatened to strike during Christmas peak season. The invoices were approved. The new millennium brought new enemies. RICO laws, post-9/11 financial tracking, and tech-savvy rivals like Russian oligarchs squeezed the mob's old-school rackets. Korshak's shell companies unraveled in 2001 when the IRS traced $30 million to a Cayman Islands account labeled Mickey Mouse Holdings. Ianello died in prison in 2005, ranting about streaming porn voodoo. And in 2009, the feds busted 83 Gambino members, including a capo running a Twitter spam ring selling fake Viagra. Yet the DNA remained. When Harvey Weinstein faced rape charges in 2017, his lawyer was David Boies, the same attorney who'd represented Korshak. The more Hollywood changed, the more it recycled its ghosts. The 1980s to 2000s proved the mob didn't need theaters to rule Hollywood, just loopholes. Korshak's casino schemes inspired Casino, 1995. The Mitchell's Rebellion became a documentary, Inside Deep Throat, 2005. And Matty the Horse's porn empire? It's now a footnote on Pornhub. As FBI agent Joe Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco, noted, the Mafia didn't lose. They just upgraded from VHS to VPN. In the end, the shadow economy survived by doing what Hollywood does best, reinventing itself, one dirty deal at a time. Chapter 7, Hollywood's Modern Mob, 2000s onwards. Brooklyn, 2023. Joe Dante adjusted his leather jacket and squinted at the neon glare of a film set's floodlights. By day, he played Vinny the Enforcer in a gritty indie flick about irony of ironies, a loan shark with a heart of gold. By night, he was Vinny, collecting debts for the Gambinos in Bensonhurst. But when his face flashed on screen during a crowd scene in the Brooklyn Connection, his bosses erupted. "You want to be a star? We'll make you a fucking star," they growled, tossing his headshot into a barrel fire. Dante vanished 2 days later. His IMDb page now reads, "No known credits." Hollywood's mob ties never died, they just learned to code. The 21st century mob swapped Tommy guns for TikTok. With RICO laws crippling traditional rackets, organized crime syndicates, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Russian Mafia, pivoted to Silicon Valley's playbook: scale, secrecy, and disruption. The Netflix shuffle. In 2017, a Sicilian clan laundered 10 million euros through a Bologna-based production company that licensed mob-backed films to streaming platforms. Titles like Blood and Honey, a Godfather knockoff, and Crypto Kings, a documentary about Bitcoin scams, cycled through Netflix's algorithm, generating legitimate revenue funneled to Malta shell companies. NFT nightmares. By 2021, the Gambino family had infiltrated the NFT gold rush. Through a Miami front called Digital Renaissance, they minted 10,000 gangster apes, pixelated primates smoking cigars, netting $2.4 million before the SEC flagged the project as a pump and dump scheme. AI-generated grift. Deepfakes became the mob's newest weapon. In 2024, a cloned Robert De Niro endorsed a fake film fund that siphoned $6 million from Saudi investors. The AI's flaw? It called Goodfellas, a documentary about my friend Jimmy Burke. Hollywood's A-list has always danced with danger, but the 2000s blurred the line between brand ambassador and bagman, the Marvel laundering nexus. In 2015, a Ukrainian oligarch tied to the Odessa Mafia invested $150 million in a Marvel Studios slate via a Cyprus hedge fund. The deal collapsed when Kevin Feige spotted a clause requiring a Black Widow subplot about heroic oil traders. Influencer shakedowns. TikTok's rise birthed a new scam, MobTube. The Colombo family groomed Gen Z influencers like Gianna Ricci, 2.7 million followers, to promote investments in fake wellness brands. Followers who bought $500 vibrational water kits later received threatening DMs. Pay up or we'll leak your search history. Rap royalties. The intersection of hip-hop and organized crime turned toxic. In 2020, a Gambino capo allegedly strong-armed a 5% stake in Jay-Z's Rock Nation via a shell company named Bronx Symphony LLC. The deal imploded when prosecutors traced wire transfers to a Brooklyn check-cashing store. Joe Denti wasn't supposed to be famous. A low-level Gambino enforcer, he earned $800 a week breaking thumbs in Brooklyn. But in 2019, a meth-addled director spotted Denti's authentic vibe at a Staten Island bar and cast him in Knuckle Down, a micro-budget thriller. Denti's role? A mobster who breaks thumbs. Method acting came natural, co-star Lila Cruz later recalled. Joe'd finish a scene, then step outside to make calls, which sounded a lot like, "Where's my fucking money, Tony?" Trouble struck during the Brooklyn Connection reshoots. Denti's face, unmasked in a crowd scene, aired at a Gambino poker game. The bosses hated attention, an FBI informant noted. Joe was dumb enough to use his real nickname, Teeth, in the credits. Denti's last known whereabouts, a Queens storage unit rented under the alias Vincent Chase. Law enforcement struggles to keep pace with Tinseltown's tech-savvy crooks. Operation Silver Screen. In 2021, the DOJ indicted 34 members of the Lucchese family for infiltrating SAG-AFTRA pensions. Their play? Forcing retirees to invest in mob-backed films like Sopranos, The Retirement Home, The Crypto Seller Sting. Undercover agents posed as indie producers seeking funding for Bitcoin Bloodbath, a thriller about darknet assassins. They netted 12 arrests, including a Russian oligarch who demanded a producer credit. Deepfake detectives. The LAPD's media fraud unit now employs AI to spot mob-linked projects. Their first bust? A fake Martin Scorsese directing a Genovese-funded casino sequel filmed entirely in a Staten Island basement. Hollywood's mob saga endures because both industries thrive on the same fuel: myth-making, manipulation, and the art of the deal. When The Irishman, 2019, grossed $200 million, Frank Sheeran's daughter sued Netflix, claiming the mob still owed her family residuals. The cycle continues. As one indie producer, who requested anonymity, admitted, "Every film fund has dirty money. You just pray it's the fun kind of dirty." In the end, Hollywood and the mob aren't collaborators, they're co-authors. And the next chapter is always a page-turner.